I have a story today about how sometimes we can find like a point of agreement with right wingers and then very quickly see that point of agreement devolve into them having some of the absolute worst political instincts I can imagine, where the solutions we imagine to the points of agreement couldn't be more different. And we've been covering the rising unrest in Cuba. Cuba's COVID situation is rapidly devolving into a public health chaos that we've not seen throughout the pandemic in Cuba. The economy is further collapsing. Inflation is starting to explode, and we're not talking about 5%. Thanks to more internet access in Cuba, the Cuban people are now coordinating and hitting the streets in protest. This is a complicated situation in which I, as an anti-authoritarian left-winger, oppose the Cuban regime. I do not know how anyone calling themselves progressives could support a regime that came to power with Fidel Castro in 1959, stayed in power for 49 years until 2008, and then handed power to his brother, Raul Castro. That's not democracy. It's also an authoritarian police state with total control over just about every aspect of people's lives. So as an anti-authoritarian progressive who's in favor of democracy, Northern European social democracy, et cetera, I am against that. There's no way I could be for that. And also, many Cuban Americans oppose that regime. Many of them are right wingers, but they oppose the regime often for different reasons. The current mayor of Miami is Cuban American Francis Suarez. He's the son of the first Cuban-born mayor of Miami. The current mayor's father, Javier Suarez, was also the mayor of Miami previously. And he went on, Francis Suarez, that is, went on Fox News yesterday and was talking about what's going on in Cuba. And somehow he ends up with, maybe the U.S. military should bomb Cuba. What? How could that possibly be an action that would improve what's going on in Cuba if what we want to do is help the Cuban people? So let's look at the full clip, and you'll see that along with a long list of terrible instincts, there's this idea of military action. Okay, let's listen.
A repressive government and a cruel U.S. embargo. They deserve policies that empower them and help them improve their lives. Do you think that President Biden, looking at this situation, will lift that embargo? And do you think that's what he should do?
No, I don't think the embargo is cruel at all. And I think that the Cuban people are not asking for a lifting of the embargo. They're going.
Okay, so two things already. First of all, the Cuban embargo, cruel or not, is completely hypocritical. The Cuban embargo is based on the idea that the United States disagrees with Cuba's system of government. I'm with you. I disagree with it as well. I also disagree with Saudi Arabia's system of government. And yet we continue that relationship almost completely unquestioned, even by most of the Democratic establishment. So again, if we want to credibly say we want to help the Cuban people, the Cuban embargo hasn't forced them to change their system of government for 60 years or whatever the case is at this point in time, 60 something years, 62 years. And it's just hurting the Cuban people. Number two, when Suarez says the protests from the Cuban people aren't against the embargo, listen, they may not be overtly against the embargo, but much of what is leading Cuba to be what it is right now is related to that embargo. Not all of it. Part of it is the system of government in Cuba. And I vehemently believe that has to change. But to say the protests have nothing to do with the embargo, that ignores context completely. But let's keep going.
Out in the streets every single day talking about the failure of the communist regime to provide for its people. And I don't understand why that's so difficult for people to understand.
So it can be both, Francis. We can both say the authoritarian police state, anti-democratic regime that's been in place since 1959 is unlikely to be great for the people of Cuba, and that's true. And the American embargo also makes it worse. Both things can be true. Then we get into the military stuff.
It has failed for 6 decades. And what should be being contemplated right now is a coalition of potential military action in Cuba, similar to what has happened in both administrations, in both Republican and Democrat administrations. In Republican with Bush in Panama, they deposed Noriega, and that country had peace.
Military action. Military action, I mean, listen, it's a different debate. But one might argue, you talk about military action if there's a real risk to the United States or our interests in Cuba, but other than Guantanamo Bay. I don't know exactly what interests we have. There's a national security threat. Cuba having a large population that has almost nothing and being oppressed by that regime. Military action? Come on. It is not a national security threat, the likes of which we would be talking about military action, whether that's bombing, whether that's an assassination campaign by a covert arm of the military or whatever. This is just the epitome of I'm against the Cuban regime as an anti-authoritarian leftist. Francis Suarez is against the Cuban regime based on the vague idea of being against communism, and we're both against the regime. But military action, that's the last thing that's on my mind. And it is just another example of how even when we find points of agreement with some of these folks, their solutions are very much the wrong ones. And this has been a big thing with populism. I've said before, one of the dangers of populist rhetoric and falling for it is that populist rhetoric from left-wingers and populist rhetoric from right-wingers sounds very similar. And then you get to the solutions, and man of the people Tucker Carlson is saying, well, we need a solution because soon Black Lives Matter is going to take your house and brown people coming in are the problem, right? The immigrants make the country dirty, as he has previously said. And that's the pernicious nature of that rhetoric. So let me know your thoughts. You can find me on Twitter at @Pakman. Remember that August 16th is the 16th anniversary of the David Pakman Show. We are having a huge membership blowout. My lawyer and accountant are beating down the doors saying, sir, don't do it. Don't do this. You can't do it, sir. It's going to be too big of a discount. Sure. Exactly. But we're doing it on August 16th. And you can get on our newsletter by signing up at davidpakman.com. Hope you'll participate. We'll be back right after this. One of our sponsors today is Sheath Underwear. It's the middle of summer. That can mean a lot of sweating, sticking, chafing with traditional underwear, but not with Sheath Underwear, which has created unique boxer brief designs with multiple ergonomic compartments in the front. Keeps everything separate, cool, dry, and comfortable, even in the hottest time of year, especially when you need it. Sheath Underwear was invented by an Iraq War veteran who was looking for a solution to the problems he was having with traditional underwear in the desert heat. And he realized that what he came up with is perfect for everyday use. And that's where Sheath Underwear came from. It keeps you dry and comfortable like no other underwear can. Give Sheath Underwear a try. I've had a great experience with it. I know you will too. You can find the link right underneath this video. And don't forget to use the promo code PAKMAN for 20% off.